anyone who hasn't felt it is impossible. You need to feel the fear inherent to the place. It's everywhere. I can't ever go back. Magenta won't even talk about it. She yells at me whenever I bring it up. We've been close friends for years, but she won't talk about this. In this thread, share your stories on /out/ experiences that you know of / have experienced, dogmen, skinwalkers, night marchers, banshee, etc. I saw a UFO when I was 10 or 11 out camping. Everyone else was chatting around the campfire and generally staring at the fire. I was looking at the stars the whole time, and then the brightest star all of a sudden got about 10 to 20 times brighter, and then made an impossible spiralish movement, and then darted away across the night sky at a ridiculous speed. I live next to a forest and hike 3 times a week, no less than 6 miles each time. Familiar trails or just trudging through the woods, often in the evening or at sunset. Haven't seen anything that /out/and/x/ tell campfire stories about, but lots of weird shit. Trails changing on the fly. Coming back home along the same trail I came through, suddenly it gets a new twist or some feature I didn't see on my way in, like a small ravine or a dry log blocking the path that clearly was there for a long time. Never got lost, though. Sounds. Sometimes the woods go quiet all of a sudden, like someone flips a switch. Or it is concert time, when as if on a cue, the entire forest starts chirping, croaking, singing, etc. Even my dog barks itself hoarse when that happens. Smells. Now this really makes me nervous. Some smells definitely do not belong in a forest, yet I often sense them. Decaying meat, fresh dung, rotten bark, and pine sap are all normal while /out/, but molten metal, incense, cinnamon, and powdered bone, the dentistry kind, are definitely not. And there are no garbage dumps or hobo camps anywhere nearby, either. Lights. When hiking at night, I sometimes see a red light flickering and moving in the distance, but that's most likely the local nature preserve by me. On hike with GF took an unfamiliar route. Not a sound or anything, a hiker comes up behind us. Says hello and moves ahead. Strange calm pressure in air until he disappeared. Trail dead ends into a wall and stream. Hiker nowhere to be found. Nowhere he could have gone where we wouldn't have seen him. No explanation to this since. GF and I never talk about it. I went camping by the beach once with my dad. We were walking to drink some coffee and chill at the beach and we saw some weird mammal thing cross our path. It was black as night, smaller than a doe, but bigger than any sort of otter or whatever mammals are in that area. Not scary, just weird. It was early morning, so the lighting was bad, and both of us were distracted and only caught a glimpse, so it was probably something normal, and we just went retard mode. Went camping with the family when I was about 14 years old. It's a beachside campsite in the middle of nowhere, pic related. We unpack the tents and the chairs. Dad gives me my first beer. He said it's better to drink around adults responsibly than to sneak alcohol when no one's looking. Chilling out in the dunes. Night comes and we stay up late until like 1 a.m. Right before we're about to pack up, the sky starts flashing from a black starry night to a faint red hue. What the fuck? It isn't just me, everyone sees it. Keep in mind that we are almost 100 kilometers from the nearest town and had seen no one the entire trip. It carried on for approximately 5 minutes. It wasn't regular pattern since the times between the flashes was always different. My family hasn't spoken of it since. Not that exciting, but this post resurfaced a long forgotten memory. About 10 years ago I was out in the bush near my place doing some photography. I went in deep, so deep it got dark before I could get out. Felt like something was stalking me. I was creeped out. Looking around into the darkness of the forest, thought I could see reflective eyes. Shine my camera's flash. Yup, reflective eyes. I start running away. Smell is disgusting, like an abandoned grocery store bad. Immediately nauseous and vomiting, from the smell. I hear it rapidly approaching. I think it's a bear, so I hold my ground, and try to look big by holding my jacket above my head. Feel like I'm gonna die. It charges me, definitely not a fucking bear. It goes from charging on all fours to stopping, then like growing onto its feet. Does that make sense? It's standing in front of me, looks like a mess. I used to cosplay while out for photos like Lord of the Rings or Link from Laws. I had a metal cosplay sword, not sharp or anything, so I hold it out. IDK, I'm fucked at this point anyway, and it's all I really have. I figure even if it doesn't cut, it should be like a blunt object strike. It lunges and goes to bite me. I drive the sword into its mouth. It starts screeching. My fucking ears. I'm suddenly surrounded by a group of people asking me if I'm okay and telling me to get out, and they'll take care of the rest. IGTFO. To this day I don't know what the fuck or who the fuck. Possibly missing 411 related. I was in Zion National Park a few years ago, and started getting real jumpy at nothing. Felt anxiety, almost like a panic attack, heart going crazy, etc. Then got fearsomely hot, then cold, then hot again. Felt like I wanted to jump in water or rip all my clothes off or find a cave and hide in it. It was fucking really weird. I got out of there fine and took a couple days off. The welcome booth person thought I might have had heat stroke or was dehydrated, but honestly it wasn't that hot or bright. It was just fucking really strange. Just got back from work. Here it goes. Back in 2008, I took the summer off, and lived like a hermit on BLM land in North Arizona. The place was beautiful. Overlooking a wide, shallow grass valley, with juniper trees along the hills. I didn't have a tent, so I built a lean-to facing south looking into the valley. I had been there a month, and started finding weird tracks in the valley. They looked like coyote tracks, but bigger. Didn't really think much of it, until that night I saw it. It was mid-July with full moon so bright you could almost read by it. I sitting just outside the lean-to looking down into the valley when I saw something walking about 200 yards away. At first I figured it might be some cowboy or lost hiker. Grabbing my binoculars I saw it wasn't a person, even though it was walking on 2 legs. Best guess was about 6 foot tall, maybe 100 pounds. It was scrawny like it hadn't eaten in a while. I was still looking at it when it stopped, raised its muzzle into the air and sniffed. Must had felt me watching, because it turned and looked right at me. We looked at each other for a good 30 seconds. I was so scared I couldn't look away. Then it turned and walking again. I hadn't made a fire because it was so warm, and the full moon. But I grabbed my 30-30, and proceeded to make a large one. Next day I found its tracks down in the valley. The same as I had found earlier. I stayed at the camp for another month, never seeing it again, or finding its tracks. When I was in high school in Louisiana, me and some friends were drinking and talking about local ghost and witch legends, and one of them said he knew where a witch was buried. I had some vague memory of this story too, and soon we were psyched to go. We drove around on back roads, getting lost. There was one of those above-ground Louisiana-style tombs, with writing in French in it, and we sat there and looked, and then all of a sudden I was getting the crap bit out of me by fire ants. Anyone who lived in the South knows how bad those are. I went back to the car trying to brush them off my shoes and legs, and when I got there were no fire ants on me and none of the red blisters that they produce when biting. Shit. I too have had a creepy experience in an isolated corner of a cemetery in Kyoto. Wasn't past midnight or anything, just was walking around this massive old cemetery in one of the old parts of Kyoto. All alone. Had seen people here and there, but suddenly alone, and the clouds cover the sun out of nowhere. Huge fucking blackbirds land all around of the stone walls. Japanese cemeteries often have large walled areas that have different families and such kept separate, and start cawing. Suddenly get the distinct feeling I'm in a room full of people. You know that feeling? Like even if you are not touching and everyone is silent, you know there's people there? Like in a movie theater right before it starts? And I felt anger, or like I was in trouble, and started to sweat and get uncomfortable. Left that section of the cemetery and immediately felt better. I was about 13 when I was guiding a backpacking trip with my dad. He ran a camp, and I knew the route they were taking, so I figured I'd go along and help. Terrible mistake. There was some kid in the group we were guiding that was clearly possessed, like the weird shit he'd start mumbling to himself, things he'd say to others, and he didn't fucking eat anything the entire time we were /out/there, 3 days. From the beginning of the trip he seemed to take an unhealthy interest in me, but I didn't think too much of it. That is, until he set up his tent right across from mine. First night, and I couldn't sleep. I finally started to drift off, then suddenly I couldn't breathe. Something was on top of me, and I tried to scream but I couldn't because whatever it was choking me out. I felt like I was being swallowed alive by the earth as this thing was covering my mouth and sitting on my chest. Never been that scared again since. I was begging God to let me die. Finally it stopped. I guess it gave up on offing me. Unzipped my tent as fast as I could and got the fuck out, but nothing was there and everyone else in the camp seemed to be asleep. Didn't get much sleep that night. Next morning we decided to play a game of hide and seek in a nearby meadow, tradition that my dad and I always did when we backpacked that trail with others. Ever since the previous night I had this uneasy feeling, like something was constantly breathing down my neck. I was hiding, and found some massive log on its side, so I lay down behind it. Nothing was too out of the ordinary until I heard what I thought were some of the other kids nearby singing. I looked around, and was completely alone. Then it happened again. 2 dissonant and 1 consonant notes, I can still hear it in my head. It happened a total of 3 times that day, and when I asked others about it they said they hadn't heard anything of the sort. The whole experience